Maybe you didn't click on this video by accident. Maybe something in you, something quieter and more instinctive than your conscious decision-making, moved you in this direction today. Maybe you were looking for something else entirely and ended up here. Maybe you have been circling this moment for days without realizing it, and the click itself was simply the last small motion in a series of invisible movements that began somewhere earlier, somewhere deeper, in the place where the things you genuinely need tend to originate before they become visible. There are certain days when the words we encounter land differently from how words usually land. Not because the words themselves are necessarily extraordinary, but because we arrive at them carrying a particular kind of readiness, an openness that has been created, often without our conscious permission, by everything we have been living through. On those days, something that might have passed through us unnoticed on an ordinary afternoon instead reaches somewhere real. Somewhere that needed reaching. This may be one of those days for you. What is coming across the next several minutes is not a prediction. It is not a promise about what will happen in your life or a guarantee about the future you are moving toward. It is something more honest than that, and something that may ultimately be more useful. It is a reflection, carefully considered, offered with genuine care, of the things that tend to be true about people who find themselves in the particular kind of moment that you may be in right now. A moment of searching, of quiet uncertainty, of something shifting that has not yet finished shifting. If any part of that description resonates, stay. Because what is coming has layers, and the most meaningful part will not arrive first. The most meaningful things rarely do. They wait for everything before them to do the necessary work of opening the door. What is behind that door is what this message is about. And we will get there. But first, there is something important to understand about where you are right now, and why being here, in this exact place, on this exact day, matters more than it might appear. There is something that has been happening in your life lately that has made this day feel different from the ones before it. Not dramatically different, perhaps. The difference may be quiet enough that you could almost miss it if you were not paying a certain kind of attention. But it is there. A subtle shift in the quality of your inner experience, a change in the texture of your days that you can feel without being able to fully name. Perhaps what you have been feeling most consistently is a kind of heaviness. Not the specific, targeted weight of a particular problem, though you may have those too. A more diffuse heaviness. The kind that settles in over time, not from a single event but from an accumulation of small disappointments, of sustained uncertainty, of hope that has been extended over longer than it was originally designed to hold. The kind of tired that sleep does not fully touch, because it is not your body that is most in need of rest. It is something deeper. Perhaps you have been feeling unmotivated in a way that concerns you. The things that used to create momentum in you, the projects, the plans, the relationships, the simple daily rituals that used to carry their own kind of energy, have felt flat recently. Like the frequency that used to animate them has drifted out of your range. And you have been going through the motions, because the motions still need going through, while quietly wondering whether the feeling will return or whether this flatness is now simply how things are. Perhaps you have been doubting yourself in ways that feel more pronounced than usual. Not the productive, self-examining kind of doubt that leads to genuine reflection and useful course correction. The other kind, the reflexive, automatic, persistent kind that arrives before you have even taken an action and tells you in advance that it probably will not work, that you are probably not equal to it, that something fundamental about you falls short of what the situation requires. The kind of doubt that has been in the room so long it has started to feel like a permanent resident rather than an unwelcome visitor. Perhaps you have been questioning your path. Not in the dramatic, urgent way of a crisis, but in the quiet, persistent way of a person who has been doing the right things, making the responsible choices, showing up as they were supposed to show up, and still finding themselves uncertain whether any of it is leading somewhere meaningful. Wondering whether the direction you have been traveling in is actually yours, or whether it is a direction you accepted for reasons that once made sense and now feel less persuasive. Perhaps life has been unusually quiet in a way that is its own kind of disorienting. Not the comfortable quiet of rest and peace, but the suspended quiet of waiting, for something to resolve, for something to shift, for a sign or a signal or a clear next step to emerge from the fog of your current uncertainty. A waiting that has started to feel less like patience and more like stagnation, even though you cannot fully distinguish between them. And perhaps you have been searching. Not for a specific thing, but for a feeling. The feeling of being aligned with something larger than the routine of your days. The feeling of meaning, not vague and theoretical, but present and immediate and woven into the actual fabric of how you are living. The feeling of hope not as a concept but as a lived experience. A warmth that moves through you and makes the future feel not just possible but genuinely, personally meant for you. If any of these things are true for you, then I want you to hear this with the full weight that it deserves. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not the exception to the possibility of things getting better. You are a person who is in a difficult season, and difficult seasons are not permanent states of being. They are the weather that certain chapters of a life require. They are not the last chapter. And there is something happening inside them, something quiet and gradual and not yet fully visible, that is worth understanding. Because it changes everything about how you hold this period of your life, and how you are able to move through it. What difficult seasons do, when we allow them to, is teach us things that easier seasons simply cannot. This is not a comfortable observation. If you are in the middle of something hard right now, being told that it is teaching you something can feel dismissive, like the difficulty is being reframed rather than acknowledged. So let me be clear, the difficulty is real. The exhaustion is real. The doubt and the heaviness and the uncertainty are real, and they deserve to be met with honesty rather than with the kind of silver lining thinking that bypasses the genuine experience of going through something hard. But with that acknowledgement fully in place, there is still something true that needs to be said. The seasons of greatest difficulty are also, consistently and across every kind of human life, the seasons of greatest interior development. Not because suffering is noble or necessary in itself, it is not, and the goal is never to seek it out or to romanticize it. But because certain kinds of growth simply do not happen in comfort. Certain qualities of character, certain depths of wisdom, certain capacities of resilience, certain forms of clarity about who we actually are and what we actually value, are only accessible through the specific conditions that difficulty creates. Patience is one of the things being shaped in you right now. Not the passive kind of patience, not the simple waiting that anyone can manage when the waiting is brief enough. Active patience. The kind that requires you to keep choosing, day after day, to remain open to the possibility of things shifting, even when the current evidence is thin. The kind that requires trust not in a specific outcome but in the process itself, in the reality that things move, that seasons change, that the story is not over at the end of the difficult chapter. That kind of patience, when it is built through genuine use, becomes one of the most stabilizing qualities a person can possess. Inner strength is another. And inner strength is not a static attribute that some people have and others lack. It is a capacity that is built incrementally, through each instance of meeting a difficult thing and managing it. Every day that you have functioned through the heaviness, every conversation you showed up for while carrying what you have been carrying, every responsibility you met while the inner landscape was harder than anyone around you knew, every moment you chose to keep going when stopping seemed significantly easier, has added to a reserve of demonstrated resilience that belongs to you. That reserve is real. It is not nothing. And it is larger than you have probably given yourself credit for. Acceptance is perhaps the most nuanced of the lessons available in hard times. Not acceptance in the sense of passive resignation, not the giving up that masquerades as peace. Acceptance in the sense of releasing the energy that has been spent fighting what cannot be changed. The exhaustion of resisting reality, of wishing intensely that things were different from how they are, of replaying the past in search of moments where different choices might have led to different outcomes, of spending the present in a sustained argument with what has already happened, is its own kind of depletion. And there is a particular lightness that becomes available when that energy is released. Not because the circumstances become easier, but because the energy that was being consumed in resistance becomes available for other things. For growth, for creativity, for genuine engagement with the life that is actually happening rather than the one that was imagined. And forgiveness, perhaps least expected in this list and perhaps most significant. The forgiveness of others for the ways they fell short of what you needed. But more importantly, and often more difficult, the forgiveness of yourself. For the choices that did not lead where you hoped. For the time that passed before you were ready to make different ones. For the ways you managed imperfectly under conditions that were themselves imperfect. The most productive version of self-reflection is not the one that keeps returning to what went wrong as though continued scrutiny will produce some retroactive improvement. It is the one that extracts what is genuinely useful, the real lesson, the honest understanding, and then extends to the past self the basic grace of recognizing that it did what it could with what it had at the time. Because it did. You did. And moving forward from here requires being able to do so without the weight of your own self-judgment chained to your ankle. These are not small things being developed in you right now. They are among the most significant things a human being can develop. And they are becoming available to you precisely because of what you have been going through. There is more that this period is preparing you for, and that is something worth knowing. But first, there is something else, something in the ordinary texture of your days that deserves a different kind of attention than it has perhaps been receiving. There are moments that arrive without announcing themselves as significant. Moments that seem, on the surface, to be simply ordinary, a chance encounter, a phrase overheard in an unexpected context, a number that catches your eye at a moment of particular resonance, a dream that carries a quality of significance that lingers through the morning long after the imagery has dissolved. These moments are easy to dismiss. In fact, the rational mind is specifically trained to dismiss them, to account for them through the language of coincidence, of confirmation bias, of the brain's well-documented tendency to find patterns. But there is another way to hold these moments that does not require any particular metaphysical belief and does not demand more certainty than is available. They can be held as invitations. As the mind and the life reaching toward each other across the ordinary surface of the day, offering brief windows of contact in the moments when attention is genuinely present. Consider the unexpected conversation, the one that happened in a context where you would not have predicted finding it, with someone you might not have expected to receive it from, that contains something you had been privately thinking about in a form you had not yet been able to articulate for yourself. These conversations are not rare. They happen to people all the time. But they are only received by the people who are paying a certain quality of attention, who are awake to the possibility that meaning can arrive through ordinary channels, and who are willing to slow down long enough to let it actually land. Consider the meaningful coincidence, the timing that seems too precise to be random, the way one thing leads to another in a chain that, looking back, has an almost narrative quality. You look for one thing and find something else entirely, and that something else turns out to be exactly what the situation called for. These moments are not proof of anything supernatural. But they are evidence of something real, that when we are genuinely open, when we are paying attention with curiosity rather than anxiety, the world offers considerably more than it does when we are moving through it on autopilot. Perhaps you have been seeing the same numbers appearing in your peripheral vision with unusual regularity. Certain sequences on clocks, on addresses, in the small numerical data of ordinary life. It is entirely possible that this is simply the well-understood psychological phenomenon of selective attention, that once a number becomes significant to you, you begin noticing it in places it was always appearing, rather than that it is appearing more frequently. And it is also possible to hold that understanding while simultaneously appreciating what the noticing itself offers, a moment of pause, of awareness, of contact with the present moment in a world that is relentlessly designed to keep you somewhere between the past and the future. The number is less the point than the noticing. The noticing is the invitation. Your dreams, recently, may have been speaking in a language worth learning. Not literally, the images of dreams are not usually to be taken at face value, and the interpretation of specific dream content is far less reliable than the feeling of the dream, the emotional residue it leaves, the themes that recur with an insistence that suggests something unresolved or something trying to surface. Pay attention to what your sleeping mind keeps returning to. It is processing your experience at a depth your waking consciousness cannot easily access, and what it surfaces through imagery is often a truer representation of your interior state, your real fears, your genuine desires, your most pressing needs, than what your careful waking mind allows to be directly visible. The sudden clarity, the moment when something that has been confusing you suddenly, without apparent reason, becomes clear. A decision that was agonizing resolves itself overnight. A situation that seemed intractable reveals an angle you had not considered. Something you have been circling for days simply lands, and you know without needing to reason further, without needing external validation. These moments are worth trusting more than you may have been trusting them. They are not magical. They are the result of processing that has been happening below the surface of consciousness, the continuous, largely invisible work of a mind that does not stop working simply because you have stopped consciously directing it. All of these moments, the conversations, the coincidences, the numbers, the dreams, the clarity, are pointing in the same direction. Towards something that the next part of this message is going to name. Something that the whole of what you have been living through has been preparing you to actually hear. And now we arrive at the heart of it. The reason this message exists, and the reason something in you chose today to receive it. There are things that are true about you and about your situation that you may not be holding with the weight they deserve. Things that are not comforting abstractions but are genuine, verifiable, concrete realities that would shift how you are carrying yourself through your days if you allowed yourself to fully receive them. The first of these is simple and, for that reason, easy to underestimate. You are stronger than you have been acting. Not stronger than you feel. Feeling strong is not always available, and the expectation that you should always feel capable is one of the crueler ones that gets placed on human beings. But stronger than the behavior that fear has been producing. There is a version of you, consistent, capable, clear-eyed, genuinely courageous, that lives beneath the layer of doubt that has been running the most recent weeks or months. That version has not disappeared. It has simply been outvoiced by the part of you that is tired, that is scared, that has been through enough disappointment to have developed a protective habit of not extending itself too far in the direction of hope. But protection and truth are not the same thing. And the truth is that the evidence of your strength is written into the fact of your presence here, in everything you have already navigated without the framework falling apart. The second thing worth hearing, not every delay is a setback. This is perhaps the most practically useful reframe available to you right now, because so much of what has been generating despair in your recent experience has been the interpretation of delay as failure. The plan that has not yet materialized interpreted as evidence that it will never materialize. The relationship that has not yet arrived interpreted as evidence that it is not coming. The recognition that has not yet appeared interpreted as evidence that the work is not worthy of recognition. But timing is real. The conditions for certain things to arrive and to flourish are specific, and sometimes they are simply not yet in place, not because the thing itself is unavailable, not because you are not ready or worthy, but because some other element of the constellation has not yet moved into position. The thing you have been waiting for may be closer than the silence has been suggesting. Your past does not define your future. This phrase is used often enough that it risks feeling empty, like a phrase that exists to comfort rather than to genuinely inform. But consider it carefully, because it contains something that is easy to miss. The story your past tells about you is always a story of who you were in circumstances that no longer fully exist, making choices from a set of resources, beliefs, and understandings that have since changed. You are not the same person who made those choices. You are not operating from the same information, the same wounds, the same fears, the same self-knowledge. And a different person, operating from a different internal landscape, does not produce the same outcomes. Your history is data. It is not destiny. Let go of what no longer serves you. Not because holding on is weakness, but because the energy spent maintaining a grip on what has already completed its purpose in your life is energy unavailable for the next thing. The person you have outgrown. The belief you inherited that was never actually yours. The expectation you have been carrying on behalf of someone else's idea of who you should be. The version of your life that was planned for circumstances that have since changed. The habit that once protected you and now merely limits you. Each of these is a hand closed around something that was meant to be temporary, and opening that hand, gradually, with compassion for the part of you that has been holding on, creates the space that the next chapter requires. Trust your inner wisdom. Not blindly, not as a bypass of genuine discernment, not as an excuse to avoid thinking carefully about what you are doing and why, but as a genuine source of reliable information about what is right for you that is often more accurate than the external data might suggest. You have accumulated, through the specific sequence of experiences that constitute your particular life, a depth of understanding about yourself and about what serves your growth that is significant and real. That understanding speaks to you, in the quality of your instincts, in the felt sense of rightness or wrongness that arrives before your analysis has time to catch up, in the parts of you that recognize the truth of something before you have built the intellectual case for it. That voice deserves a seat at the table of your decision-making. It has been earning it for years. Small choices today create meaningful change tomorrow. The story you will tell in 5 years about how things shifted for you will almost certainly center on a small decision that looked unremarkable at the time. Not the dramatic leap, not the grand gesture, not the single defining moment that rewrote everything in an instant, but the quiet, consistent choice, made in an ordinary moment, that set a slightly different trajectory in motion. That trajectory, over time, arrives somewhere very different from where the previous one was headed. You are in the ordinary moment right now. The small choice is available, and its potential to matter more than it looks is real. And finally, because this may be the thing that has been most difficult to hold on to lately, hope often returns quietly. It rarely announces itself with fanfare. It does not typically arrive as a sudden, overwhelming certainty that everything is going to be fine. It arrives, more often, as a small and tentative shift in the quality of a morning. As a moment of unexpected lightness in the middle of a heavy week. As a brief window of genuine engagement with something that felt flat yesterday. As the faintest brightening at the edge of a long horizon. When hope comes back in this form, it is easy to dismiss it as a fluke, to be afraid of it in case it is followed by disappointment, to refuse to name it because naming it would make its loss too acute. But that tentative brightening is real. It is the first sign of something that is working its way back to you. Let it in. What does all of this mean for where your life is actually going? What does the new chapter look like that may be closer than you have been allowing yourself to believe? These are the possibilities. Not guarantees. The future is genuinely open and the choices you make within it genuinely matter, which means it cannot be predicted with certainty and should not be. But possibilities that are real and available to you as you move forward from this particular moment in your life. Emotional healing is available in a form that is more complete than what has been accessible before. Not because the things that needed healing have changed, but because you have. The understanding you have gained through the recent difficulty, the self-knowledge that has been slowly built through the process of navigating what has been navigating, has created a new capacity for addressing the things that have been left unaddressed for too long. The wound that you have been managing around rather than treating. The grief that you have been carrying rather than fully feeling and releasing. The old story about yourself that you have been unconsciously living out rather than consciously choosing. These are becoming accessible for real work. Not easy work, real work, the kind that requires sitting with what is uncomfortable rather than away from it. But work that actually moves things rather than just maintaining them. Renewed confidence is coming, not from external validation, not from circumstances finally arranging themselves to provide the feedback you have been waiting for, but from the internal accumulation of all the difficult things you have done without falling apart. Confidence built on genuine evidence is qualitatively different from confidence built on things going well. It is sturdier, less vulnerable to the weather of external circumstances, more available in the moments of genuine challenge. And what you have been doing in this difficult period, the functioning, the showing up, the continuing to choose the next right thing even without the reward of visible progress, has been building exactly this kind. Better relationships are a real possibility as you move forward, and not only with new people, though that may also be part of what comes. The quality of your existing connections can change significantly as you change significantly. When you stop needing to be seen in a particular way by others, when the validation that you have been seeking externally begins to be more genuinely provided internally, the quality of your presence in your relationships shifts. You become less managed, less performance-oriented, more actually there. And the people in your life who are capable of meeting genuine presence with genuine presence will respond to that shift in ways that may surprise you. New opportunities are approaching, and they may not look the way you expected. The most important ones rarely do. They will ask you to be flexible in your definition of what counts as a good thing, and generous in your willingness to see value in forms you did not specifically request. The skill you have been developing that seemed to have no immediate application. The connection that did not turn into what you hoped but introduced you to someone who turned into something else entirely. The door that closed and, in closing, redirected your attention to a corridor you would not otherwise have looked down. Greater peace is becoming possible, not as a final destination you reach and inhabit permanently, but as an increasing and growing baseline quality of your inner life. A capacity to return to your own center more quickly when circumstances disturb it. A growing familiarity with the difference between genuine concern and manufactured anxiety, and an increasing ability to engage with the former while declining to be consumed by the latter. This peace is not dependent on everything in your external life being resolved. It is an interior quality, and it is being built in you right now through everything you have been learning to hold. And purpose, perhaps the most important of all. The sense of living in alignment with something that matters, of contributing something that is genuinely yours to contribute, of spending your days in ways that carry your actual signature rather than the signature of someone else's idea of what your life should look like. This is not a single revelation. It is an ongoing process of getting clearer about what you genuinely care about, what you are genuinely gifted for, what genuinely costs you energy and what genuinely gives it. That clarity is deepening in you. And what it points toward is worth following. But there is something that needs to happen before any of this fully arrives. Something that is perhaps the most honest and practical piece of guidance this entire message has to offer. You need to stop carrying the things that are not yours to carry any further. Fear first. Not the fear that protects you from genuine danger, that serves a vital function and should be listened to when it speaks in response to actual threat. But the inherited, habitual, reflexive fear that has installed itself in your nervous system and now predicts catastrophe regardless of the evidence. The fear of moving too far from what is familiar. The fear of wanting too much and being disappointed. The fear of being wrong about your own worth and discovering, if you try too hard, that the evidence confirms the doubt. This fear is not truth. It is pattern. And patterns, unlike truths, can be changed. Regret is another weight to set down, not all at once, and not through the forced positivity of pretending the past was fine when it was not. But through the gradual withdrawal of energy from the replay. The past happened. Its lessons are available. Its gifts and its damages are both real. And continuing to live inside it, to grant it the majority of your emotional processing capacity at the expense of the actual present, is a choice that can be made differently starting now. Comparison is perhaps the most corrosive of the unnecessary burdens. The habit of measuring the interior truth of your own life against the exterior performance of other people's, of arriving at a calculation that is always skewed in the same direction because the comparison is always fraudulent. You are measuring your whole self, with all its complexity and struggle and nuance, against a highlight reel. You are comparing your private pain against their public ease. And the conclusion that emerges from this comparison, that something is specifically wrong with you, that others have somehow accessed a lane of life's possibilities that you have been excluded from, is exactly as reliable as any conclusion drawn from a fundamentally false premise, which is to say, not at all. Guilt that has outlived its useful function. The guilt that once carried information, that pointed towards something you genuinely needed to do differently, a repair that needed making, an accountability that needed owning, has done its job when it has been honestly engaged with. What remains after that honest engagement is not conscience. It is punishment. And you are not here to be punished. You are here to grow. Those are different things, and the former does not serve the latter. Self-doubt in its chronic form. The specific habit of arriving at new situations already disadvantaged by the assumption that you are probably not equal to them. Not the healthy self-examination that says I want to be sure I am prepared for this and what do I need to learn, but the automatic assumption that the answer to am I capable of this is almost certainly no. That habit is not protecting you from overconfidence. It is protecting an old story about your limitations that was never accurate and is certainly not accurate now. Unrealistic expectations of yourself and of others. The versions of how things were supposed to go that have been running alongside the actual events of your life, creating a constant friction between what is and what was imagined, and generating suffering not from the actual circumstances but from the gap between them and the story. The people in your life who were supposed to show up in ways they have not. The version of yourself that was supposed to have arrived by now at a particular milestone. The timeline that life was supposed to follow, before life decided to follow its own. Releasing these expectations does not mean lowering them in any permanent or significant way. It means returning your primary attention to what is actually happening, which is, in many ways, more interesting and more full of possibility than the story was. Putting these things down does not happen in a single moment. But it begins with a decision. A quiet, genuine decision to stop spending energy on things that are consuming it without returning anything of value. And that decision, made and then made again each time the old habits rise, gradually shifts the weight you are carrying into something more manageable, more sustainable, more proportionate to what you are actually here for. Something is changing in you. Not dramatically, not all at once, not in the way that is visible in a single day or week. But genuinely and significantly and in ways that are going to matter. The emotional strength that has been building through everything you have been navigating, the quiet, demonstrated resilience of a person who has been through difficult conditions and has not been destroyed by them, is becoming available to you in a new way. Not just as a thing you draw on in crisis, but as a quality that is increasingly present in the baseline of how you move through your ordinary days. A steadiness that does not require everything to be good in order to feel okay. A groundedness that does not depend on external conditions maintaining a particular quality. You are beginning to see your life differently. The shift in perspective that has been slowly working its way through your experience is producing a changed relationship to what you have been through, not a rewriting of it, not a denial of its difficulty, but a genuine integration of it. The difficult things are becoming part of your story rather than the interruption of it. They are becoming resources rather than wounds, experiences you have had rather than things that were done to you. This is not a small shift. This is the shift that turns experience into wisdom, that turns going through something into something that serves you and potentially others. You are building the kind of trust in yourself that can only be built through what you have been going through. Not trust based on things having gone well, which is contingent and therefore fragile. Trust based on evidence, on the genuine, demonstrable, historically documented fact that you have managed what has been placed in front of you. That you have remained standing. That you have found your way through the things that seemed unnavigable when they were directly in front of you, and have arrived at the other side with something intact that mattered. That track record is yours. It cannot be taken from you. And it is the foundation of a confidence in yourself that is beginning to be available in a way it has not previously been. You are becoming ready for what comes next in a way that is real rather than merely hoped for. The readiness is not the absence of fear. You may carry fear into the next chapter, and that is fine, because courage has never been the absence of fear but the willingness to act in its presence. The readiness is the growing sense that you have the interior resources to meet what comes. That you are not going to be destroyed by the uncertainty of new things, because you were not destroyed by the uncertainty of recent things, and that demonstrated capacity travels with you. And now we are at the center of it. The place this entire journey has been building toward. The thing that is most worth saying, and that will be said now without flinching and without qualification, because you have earned the right to hear it directly. You matter. Not in the abstracted, everyone matters sense that gets said so often it has lost its ability to land. In the specific, particular, irreplaceable sense. There is something that you carry, a quality of perception, a way of being present with people and with life, a particular texture of care and creativity and depth, that is yours alone. That exists in no other person in exactly the form it exists in you. And the presence of that thing in the world, your presence, your specific and unrepeatable way of showing up, creates ripples that you are not always positioned to see but that are real. The difficulty of the period you have been in has not erased that. It has not diminished it. If anything, it has refined it, the way fire refines, the way pressure shapes, the way difficulty strips away what is not essential and reveals what cannot be taken away. What cannot be taken from you is considerable. Your capacity for genuine love. Your ability to perceive things that others miss. Your particular brand of intelligence, whatever form it takes. Your resilience, which has been demonstrated repeatedly and thoroughly and which belongs to you as a permanent possession rather than a temporary state. You are not at the end of your story. You are in the middle of it, and not the dark middle of a story whose ending is bleak, but the complex, searching, developing middle of a story that has not yet revealed its best passages. The chapters that will matter most are still ahead. The relationships that will be most meaningful are still forming. The work that will carry your deepest investment is still developing the conditions in which it can be done. The version of yourself that you will one day look back on with genuine recognition and genuine pride is being built, right now, in the exact circumstances you are currently in. You are being asked, by this moment and by everything it represents, to keep going. Not with forced optimism. Not with a performance of hope that doesn't match your interior experience. But with the honest, grounded, lived recognition that this is not the end, and that what comes after it, and the care you bring to the days ahead, and the small choices you make in the direction of your own growth, and the willingness to stay open to what life offers even when it does not arrive in the expected form, is worth showing up for. You are seen, exactly as you are. In the parts of yourself that are proud and the parts that are ashamed. In the strength you have been displaying and the vulnerability you have been protecting. In the hope that has kept going and the exhaustion that has accompanied it. All of it is seen. And all of it is valued. And all of it, every complicated, contradictory, beautifully human piece of it, is part of what makes the story of your life worth telling and worth living. Take a breath before these words close. A real one, slower and deeper than the ones that have been carrying you through the day. Feel it move through you. And in the small space of stillness that creates, let yourself ask honestly, which part of this message landed most truthfully today? Not the most comfortable part. The truest part. The one that resonated somewhere below the level of thought, in the place where what we genuinely need is usually waiting quietly to be acknowledged. Whatever that part was, whatever recognition arrived, that is the thing worth sitting with. That is the message beneath the message. That is what you came here to find, and what, on some level, you already knew before you found it. You are ready to move forward. Not because everything has been resolved. Not because the fear is gone or the path is entirely clear or the outcome is guaranteed. But because you are here, you are listening, you are still reaching towards something better, and that reaching is itself the beginning of arrival. When you feel ready, leave the words "I'm ready to move forward" in the comments below. Not for anyone else. For yourself. As a declaration of intent. As a moment of saying out loud to the version of yourself that has been struggling, I am choosing the next step, even now, even from here. If this message met you where you needed meeting today, share it with someone in your life who might need to hear that they are not behind, not forgotten, not without a chapter worth looking forward to. Subscribe to Spirit of the Stars so these reflections keep finding you when you need them. And like this video if something in it was true, because that small act extends this conversation to someone who may be sitting exactly where you were sitting when you found it. The next chapter is not waiting for you to be fully ready. It is waiting for you to be willing. And you already are.